O'clock. It is time for Say It Right Sundays. I am trying a new time to see if this works for you guys, but more specifically to see if it works for me, just to kind of see how I feel about this hour. Usually I come on later on in the evening, just trying to catch more people actually participate in the live video. So I usually come on about 6:45, but I wanted to try 12 just to see if this works a little bit better, because one thing about these videos, you can always go back and watch them. So that part I love about, just being able to go live and then upload the material to Facebook or wherever else I posted. I do post these videos on my YouTube page, so it's easy for people at their leisure to go back in and watch these videos. I have had people say, hey, I've been watching your videos, and of course they don't necessarily come on live, so I know people are watching them regardless of when I actually do them and post them. So I'm trying this 12 o'clock hour because it just kind of works a little bit better for my schedule. Typically, I come home on Sundays and I'm waiting. I do what I need to do, get ready for the week, and relax a little bit, eat. If I need to cook, I cook, all that good stuff. And then I'm like sitting around waiting until 6:45 to come. So this allowed my wait to be just a little bit shorter, and I'm not sitting around waiting all day just to come live and do the videos. But if that works best for you guys, the wait is fine, because I do have plenty to do while I wait. So with that being said, this is a 12 o'clock video. It's still the same material, just a different time. Again, I'm just trying to get fit and figure out what the best times are, as it relates to the audience, and then of course as it relates to what I have going on. So we're gonna try 12 o'clock, and just to see how I flow. I may flow different at different times of the day, I don't know, so we'll see. So we are in series 4 that I have entitled Understanding English Grammar, and we talked about last week how English grammar is in us. Because we are native speakers of the English language, we are experts on English in the sense of its grammar and how to correctly structure sentences. And then we also discuss why learning grammar is so important. Even though this information and grammar is innate, it's already in us, and we have that information has to be triggered. We learn grammar so that we can consciously use that information that we subconsciously use every day. So the more I'm aware of the rules, the more I'm aware of the standards, then learning that information is going to make me that much more confident concerning that which is already inside of me. So this is the particular series we are in. Part 2, which we are covering today, deals with English as a world language. Because we know we're here on this particular platform, I'm not talking about Spanish right now. I'm not talking about any other language. I am directly dealing with, and right on in the time being, directly deals with the English language, helping people form paragraphs and sentences and better sentence structure as it relates to the English language. So this particular series is just going to tell us why English is such an important language in general. Why is English such a standard language? Why are there now, by 2020, going to be over 1 billion people learning the English language? So this particular video is going to discuss that. And so I'll get right into takeaway number 1. Takeaway number 1 is that English is a world language. We don't just use English in the United States. We have people all over the world who are probably now somewhere sitting down learning the English language. That's how huge English is in terms of the standard that it is in the nation, in the earth, in the globe. English has become this world language where people are wanting and needing to learn how English works, what it looks like, what are the words, how to speak it, how to properly form English sentences, because it's just that important. There is such a demand on the English language because of the global markets that exist and English dominating this spectrum. Okay, so that's why there's such a demand for English, the actual language of English. It is the most commonly accepted language of international business. So if I'm going to trade, if I'm going to conduct business internationally, then the most common language that is used is the English language. So last week I was watching a video. It's called The Story of English, and I have not finished it. Good information, what I've seen so far. But one of the things that it said, I don't even remember what particular part of the country they were in, but whatever the country they were in, that particular country's native language was, I want to say Hindu. But when they would go to make claims, like maybe if they were going to sue someone, you guys, the information, when the people would meet with the client, they typed all the information in English. So even though their native tongue was not English, their business practices were that it was most common to use English versus that country's native tongue. I even saw in that same video where you have a nation, again, their native tongue is not English, but when they would protest because the major news stations are English dominated, they would protest with English signs. So that's how big and broad the English language is. It is a world language, which is takeaway number one. And I'm sure you guys know that. We understand how big of a deal English is. We probably all went to school with some international students. I know I went to Georgia Southwestern, and we had a huge, I want to say, Asian population that would come in to the university. And they were learning English. That was their language to learn, when they came to us. And a lot of them already knew some basic words and basic structure and that kind of things. But they were taking English classes in terms of learning the language, where we would take Spanish, where we would have the opportunity to take Japanese, like at ASU, they have a Japanese class. I was like, wow, that's cool. But we learn different languages. People are learning our language. So I just think that's fascinating because we speak English. So we you want to learn English, but people want to learn English, and they need to learn English, especially if they're going to deal with international business and the global market, because it is the dominating language. So takeaway number 2 is a statistic for you guys. It is estimated that over 1 billion people are currently learning English worldwide. And as of the year 2020, it is predicted that those learning English as a second language or foreign language will double. So guys, in just 2017 is almost over. So we got 2 years and a couple of months. The English language and people learning that particular language, our native tongue, is going to be on a rise. Double the 1 billion that's already learning it gives us 2 billion people, according to Kenneth, Beare, who wrote an article, How Many People Learn English. 1 billion people currently today, and this article was written back in May of this year, 2017, so it's very recent data. So they're already predicting that by the year 2020, 2 billion people are going to be learning the English language worldwide. That's a lot. I believe that's a huge number. In the book that I was sharing with you guys, where I'm getting a lot of this information from, and that's the title of the book, Understanding English Grammar. And again, I forgot to bring it so you guys could see it. The book cited its source, which stated in 2003 that a total of 2,000 million people, or at least 1/3 of the world's population, speak English. So that was back in 2003, which is 14 years ago. And we see how now we're into the billions as it relates to English being a language where people are learning it worldwide. So the numbers are steadily increasing, and we even know now, according to Kenneth, Beare, that it's going to double in just 2 short years and a couple of months. We should see that number doubling. So people are wanting to learn our language, and I do believe as our language becomes if you will, more of a commodity, something that is needed, then we know we're learning we have statistics, I'm sure, of how Spanish is on the rise, and those, we have some languages besides English that are on the rise. So that's our statistics. The English language is being learned worldwide, I believe at a pretty rapid pace, again, simply because the market and the international business and how the global market works and how it moves is English based. So I can't conduct business in this global market that we live in this international market that we live in, without being a sufficient speaker of the English language. So keep working on your English. If you are a native speaker of the English language, that doesn't give us an excuse to slack off. We have people who are learning the English language, and guys, we don't want them to outspeak us, and it's our native tongue. Like, I won't say it's embarrassing, but we should. We already shared with you guys that because we are native speakers of the language, then we are the experts. And I think we should continuously strive to make our English that much better. We do have an advantage in that because it's our native tongue. Just like people whose native tongue is Spanish, they have an advantage over us. If our native tongue is French, then those people have an advantage over us. Why? They've always heard it. It's in them to know the language, and that's the same with us. So we have an advantage over people who are learning English language, and likewise them, whatever their native tongue is, they have that advantage over us. And what about if those advantages came together? What if, because my Spanish teacher, of course, she was a native Spanish speaker. Her native tongue was Spanish. So she just brought a richness to her ability to be able to speak the language and teach the language because it was her native tongue. So we bring that same advantage to the table. Because it is our native tongue, then we bring the advantage of a lifetime of experience with the language to the table. If we ever interact with somebody who's learning the language, we get a chance to possibly teach them some things about the language because we've been what's the word, inundated, like drenched in the word, drenched in the English language from birth, before birth, really. You know, your parents, when we were in our parents' womb, they talked to us in English. You know, some of our parents probably read to us in English. They put the music to their bellies, and we heard the English language, being spoken from the womb, and vice versa. Again, if English is not your native tongue, then your native language is what you heard the most, and you are an expert in that particular language. So I think that's unique. So an interesting fact, English is the universal language for air traffic control. So the same video I was telling you guys about, and this is a PBS special from like 1986. So I'm just super excited about technology because technology has allowed for me to see something that was just a couple of years old by the time I was born. Of course, I wasn't sitting down watching that at what, 4 or 5 years old, depending on the year or month rather. So in the video, it talked about how air traffic control, let's say you are an Italian, you are a pilot who travels and flies for an Italian airline. You can't speak to get confirmations and codes and all of that kind of things in your native tongue. You have to speak English. So all of the pilots who fly planes, regardless of what country they are flying from and to and all of that good stuff, guys, the universal language is English. Wow. Interesting fact. I didn't know that. So if you want to get your pilot's license and you are not an English speaker, it is not your native tongue, you are going to have to learn the language in order to get your pilot's license. So I think that's pretty cool. That's how worldwide and how universal, guys, the English language is. So our final takeaway is takeaway number 3. There is no one correct, no one proper version of the English language. There are many. So last week I was sharing with you guys about the concept of regionalism, where there are various structures to the English language based off where you stay, and these are dialects within the English language. So we know down here in the South we say y'all. Hey y'all, how's it going y'all? Bye y'all, that kind of thing. But other people say you. They break the word down. You all. One of the posts is going to post this week, it talks about you alls. I think it has an S on it. Y'alls and that kind of thing. And I don't hear my accent. I have gone to other places or been around other people who are not from Georgia, who are not from the South, and they can hear my accent. It's like, oh, you talk funny. And I'm like, no, I don't. Because I hear me, and I hear people like me who sound like me, on a pretty consistent basis because I'm from the South. So when I do travel and I go other places, You know, I'm not conscious of the fact that I sound different to other people while I'm here in Georgia, but we do have a southern drawl. We do have a southern accent. You know, accents and dialects do exist, and most of the time you're not aware of it because you're around it all of the time. So, you know, another example for regionalism, just to give you more insight to what the word is, and by definition, there are language structures that vary from one region of the country to another. So again, we say y'all down here. In other parts of the United States, they say you all. They break the word down. We say soda down here. Up north, we know that the term is pop. They say pop up there. So those are variations in the English language as it relates to dialect within the one English language, which reiterates the practice or the principle that there's like no one correct or proper version of the English language, but there is a proper and one standard for the English language. I can't send in my cover letter or a resume, I work with y'all, or I work with them, DEM. You know, that's not appropriate. That's not the standard way to write. So although there are various dialects within the English language, there are various versions of the English language because of the dialects that are within the English language. Guys, there is a standard to the English language people are expecting us to use when we use the language, and that's where grammar comes in, and that's why it's so important to learn it, so that we learn the standard way in which grammar is identified. I won't say used, because of this definition, because of regionalism, there are certain things that are acceptable in certain areas and terms that are used in certain areas that are okay. So I will say that there is a standard that is acceptable when it comes to the written language in terms of the standard, the writing part of it, not necessarily the variations of the English. So, you know, I think this particular takeaway is kind of tricky, because it's like, oh, so it doesn't matter what kind of grammar I use. But we all know that it does, because English has a standard. It has a way it's recognized as correct. Not saying that because this particular takeaway says there's no one correct and no one proper version, but it doesn't say that it's not one and one proper correct standard. Kind of a difference, if you will, on I believe what this particular takeaway is trying to let us know. So there is a standard to the English language. We know that if we have a singular subject, we need a verb that matches that. We know how to make our words plural based off of the standard of English language. We know that there's a proper way not to have dangling modifiers based off of the structure and the standard of English. So that's why we learn the English language as well, so that we can, I guess for the lack of a better term, conform to what the standard writing practices are, so that everybody gets a chance to be on the same playing field, if you will, when it comes to academic writing, when it comes to business writing, when it comes to even writing for pleasure, which is where your regionalism is more pronounced and more acceptable. If I'm writing a novel about a Southern belle, then I'm expecting to hear words like y'all. I'm expecting to see the Southern hospitality expressed in the dialogue between those characters. Versus if I'm writing a business letter, I don't want to see where you're from. You know, the company doesn't want to know that much about you, in the sense of being able to recognize your dialect and being able to recognize what part of the country you are from because of your writing. You know, it creates an even playing field, and it should create a type of buffer so that no favoritism gets put into place. Just because, oh, well, she used y'all, guys, she's from the South, let's hire her. You know, I think writing gives us an even playing ground, and it makes the business world, it makes, you know, the academic world something that's equal, if you will. You know, and so we want to be able to compete, and I want to keep reiterating that how powerful writing is. It does give you an advantage if you are able to do it well. Why? Because a lot of people just don't write well, and it's not that they aren't able to. That goes back to our first video, understanding English grammar, that they possibly have not been triggered on the inside. That proper use of grammar, that proper use of being able to soundly structure sentences it has not been triggered. And so because it has not been triggered, then I believe you see people who have difficulties putting their sentences together correctly. You see people who have difficulty making their subjects and verbs agree. One, they possibly have not been taught, and two, what's already in them, what's already innate in them, and stuff they are already consciously aware. Remember, guys, that particular takeaway is that we are already using proper grammar structure. Remember, I talked to you about the example with the baby. Sleepy. Baby goes from one word to sleepy. And then the baby may say, baby sleepy. And then those two words turn into I am sleepy as time progresses. But nobody sits a 2-year-old down and say, hey, no, the structure is I am sleepy. Nobody does that. When we speak correct grammar and we put our sentences in the correct structure, that's how we are learning. So it is important that we read. It is important that we write. It is important that we listen to music, even, I believe, and we listen to people who are speaking correctly according to the standard, not necessarily the version of English language. Because I shared with you guys about that student I had years ago who came to me and said, Miss Harris, you said that wrong. And I'm like, you guys are not supposed to. I was like, no, I said the sentence right, but he believed that you ain't was the correct standard way to say the sentence that I had, given to the kids in the hallway. You guys aren't supposed to be in the hallway, is what I said. And he politely tapped me on the shoulder and said, Miss Harris, you said that wrong. I did my mental check. I'm like, no, I said that correctly. And he was like, no, we're supposed to be you ain't. So his standard of the English language put him in a place to say you ain't is correct. And we guys, we know if we write you ain't supposed to be in a hallway and you're sending that off in an email to, let's say you're a principal and you're sending that out to the faculty and staff, they're going to look at you as unprofessional. They're going to look at you as if you don't deserve the position. Like you putting you ain't in a formal letter, you're going to kind of be frowned upon. And so English gives us an advantage. I shared with you guys last week the statistics, or a statistic about its and its. If the company manager or whoever is over the company sees you have a proper grasp of the English language, they are much more likely to assume that you're an awesome critical thinker. So our writing is equated to our other abilities we have and we do not have, even if it's not true. So our writing and how we express things and the words we put together really do. It's almost like one of those things that go before us. Our writing goes before us. Why? We send resumes before us. Before anybody ever meets us, they get our resumes. Before anybody ever meets us, they get our cover letters. Before anybody ever meets us, they get our online applications that we should be filling out in the correct standard English. They get all of that stuff before they ever get a chance to meet you or me, and our words are going before us. Our abilities to write are going before us, and they do set us apart. Being able to write correctly is going to set you apart, especially in a day and a time and an age where it's okay to write text message, or people think it's okay to use text message symbols and shorthand in formal writing, or to not put. They're so conditioned, guys. I have seen so many messages and papers, like truthfully, not just where I am now, like over the years, missing punctuation marks. It's these excessively long sentences. You have 3 or 4 sentences and you have 1 period. Why? Because we've become so conditioned to text messaging and sending quick messages out to our friends and communicating through technology, and it really is hurting our ability to use what's already in us correctly. Why? Because now it's just easier for us to communicate via technology, and we're not as mindful, some of us, and careful on what we're sending out as it relates to the standard of English writing, because I think we feel like no one cares, because everybody's texting. Everybody has a Facebook page, and of course, all of those things are not necessarily true. So I hope that makes sense. I'm trying to say with takeaway number 3, that there are versions of the English language, but we also know that there is a standard to the way the English language is supposed to be written. And that's one of the functions of Write On, to help people, I don't even want to say conform to the standard, just understand what the standard is and use it, so that you as an individual, you have an advantage. Write On Consulting Agency wants to give you an advantage over people who could care less whether or not their commas are in the right place, whether or not they're using the correct grammatical structure, whether or not they're varying their sentences. All of these things have to do with grammar, whether or not that modifier is in the correct place, whether or not the clause in the phrase matches what you're trying to say, and your word choice is correct. Those kinds of things. That's one of the things Write On strives to do, is help wherever your writing is, wherever you believe it is, wherever you've been diagnosed, if you will. You bring us a sample of your work, and we read over and we see, your strengths and your weaknesses within that work and within that level of work, or we give you one of our diagnostic assessments. Then we want to take you to your next. And then once you master that next, should you so desire, we want to take you to your next in you. There isn't a standard way to teach writing. Why? And I won't say there isn't a standard way to teach writing. I can't cookie cut what I give when I'm teaching writing, especially at the consulting level, because everybody is coming to me with different issues. So like in the writing lab, we can do some blanket subject-verb agreement lessons. But what if a student comes to me and that's not their problem? I had a student come in, and some of the students now, guys, are struggling with thesis statements. They get what they are. They understand what they are from their high school classes. But I think college just ups the ante a little bit. And so they're not quite sure now, or they're unsure of what they've already learned and what they're bringing to the table as it relates to what the professors want. So that's what they're struggling with now, a little bit more than the subject-verb agreement part. So writing isn't as cookie cutter as it's made to believe, because everybody brings a little bit more consciousness to the writing process, which is great. That's great for me. I love that. I love the variations that we get in the Writing Center. I love, because it helps me, it just puts me in a place to study. It puts me in a place to want to learn more about the English language, because some people are struggling with this, and it may not be a necessary struggle of mine, and then I meet somebody that's like, dog, I know that's not right, and sometimes I can't explain why it's not right, so that puts me back in a posture of going back and studying it out, because I like to be able to say, this is a comma splice because, and give them an explanation as to why they have the problem and what the problem is. First of all, identify the problem, and then be able to explain to them how they can correct it. Why? Because eventually they shouldn't need me. As a teacher, eventually our students shouldn't need us. As a teacher, eventually our students should be able to go on beyond what we are teaching them and get a grasp and an understanding for other concepts, building upon what we've taught them, and they should be able to move on. So that is the heart of my concerning Write On, that eventually, once you come to us, once you send us your work, once we sit down and we have our initial consultation and we talk, and I see your work improving in this, but you may still be having struggles with that, eventually you should be able to sit down and write that best-selling novel with very little mistakes. That's like my heart. That's like the end result, that you guys eventually won't need me. And that's not, it's like, oh, you won't. Yeah, but that's the reality of it. As teachers, our students should eventually, not need us as much. Maybe that's a better term. Nah, because like my first grade teacher is on here, my kindergarten teacher is on here, and like what she taught me in kindergarten, I don't need that information. You know, I don't need her to teach me that information. She did what she was supposed to do, and it helped me understand what I learned in first grade. It helped me understand what I learned in second grade, so on and so forth. So we should be working ourselves, teachers, out of a job, but we know people are always continuously, you know, having kids or having issues with writing in different parts and that kind of thing. So, okay, I've gone off in a little tangent. So, takeaway number 1, that English is a world language. Sorry about that, guys. But takeaway number 2, that 1 billion people as of May, what was the exact day? May 30th, 2017, according to Kenneth Beare. And I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. How many people learn English? According to an article he wrote, there will be 1 billion. There are currently 1 billion people who are learning the English language. By 2020, that number is going to double. It is projected that that number should double. Why such a demand on the English language? Because of the rising global markets and the way international business is conducted. English is the dominating language in that area. So we know we are a more global company, I believe, than ever before because of technology, and so English is being more needed. You know, if I want to communicate online, yes, they have where you can translate, but at least over here in the United States, it always defaults to English. So we see that the defaults, at least I'm thinking about Facebook, the default is English, at least over here in the United States. If you live in another country and that's not your default setting, please let me know, because I'm curious to know whether or not, you know, it's the default language is English, and then you have to go in and change it. All right, so takeaway number 3 was that there is no one correct, no one proper version of the English language. But guys, there is a proper version and standard of how the English language should be written. So how I pronounce words or what words I actually use, there are dialects and versions of that, which is called regionalism, based off what region I live in. I may hear pop. I'm going to hear pop instead of soda when I go up north. And people, when they come down south, are going to hear y'all versus you all. Those are examples of regionalism and what that term actually looks like. So that's today's video. Not anything long today. There wasn't a whole bunch of information about English as a world language, but just know, guys, English is a very, very dominant language in the world. People whose native tongues are not English conduct business in English. Again, the fun fact that I'm leaving you guys with is that our air control traffic individuals, they have to speak English. If we have a French pilot, he has to know English in order to fly that plane, because the air traffic control people don't understand and don't respond to any other language except for English. I think that is awesome. English is a world language, and because it is such a world language, we need to know how to use it properly so that we can conduct business. I don't know about you guys, but I want to be able to conduct business internationally. I want to be able to conduct business globally, and how be it one way we are able to do that is through writing and being able to use the standard English format and structure and those kinds of things in our writing. That's going to help us to do that. So please stay tuned. Next week's video is going to cover exactly what is grammar. And guys, I want you guys to tune in and really pay attention to the videos that are going to go forth on next week for one particular reason. Because grammar, mechanics, those are two different things. And grammar, I think, sometimes gets confused with, well, I just need you to look over my grammar, and what you're asking for is not necessarily a grammatical issue. Grammar is, I don't even want to get into it because it'll take me off into a whole nother spin. I want to make sure I understand it before I release it. But I want to define for us specifically what grammar is, so that when you hear the word grammar, you'll have the right frame of mind. You'll have the right terminology, in your head. So especially if you're asking for help and you're asking a writer for help, then you'll be able to get the help, the specific help that you need, because you may not have grammar issues. You may be having or may have what they call mechanical issues. So we're going to define grammar on next week's series. And I think the series is called just that, what is grammar? So this week's series is English, a World Language. First series was Understanding English Language, just laying a foundation that the understanding of English grammar is in us if you are a native speaker of the English grammar. And I do want to submit that whatever your native tongue is, you are that expert, and I believe those things are innate in you as well, to be able to structurally put sentences together just almost by nature. You know, it's just in you to do it. And this particular video discusses English as a world language. Guys, English is international, and you guys didn't need me to tell you that. However, I do want to point out why it's such a big deal that we get into a place where we are learning how to properly write English, because it is such a dominating language. It's been dominating for a while. It's like 2017. This particular book was what, 2003. You know, and it was dominated. 1/3 of the world's population was speaking English then, and now we're seeing we're getting into the billions. So, you know, it's still a dominating language. And I think Spanish is coming up like right behind it, if I'm not mistaken. So we may all need to start, if we don't already know it, we may need to start learning Spanish just so we can keep up with the trends of language and what's going on in the earth, and be able to conduct business all the way around as best we can with what's going on in the earth. So I thank you guys so much for watching. Whenever you see this video, I hope that it is helpful to you. It's not as long as the other one, so, but I don't know if I knew it wasn't going to be as long, just because it wasn't just a whole bunch to say about English as a world language in terms of the research that I conducted. But nevertheless, I didn't want to skip over this, especially because of the regionalism part. You are going to hear different dialects and different words used depending on what part of the region you are in, specifically in the United States, because I'm talking about the United States when I say region. But the standard, there is a standard to the English language when it is written. So if you have not seen my It Is Written series, you may want to go back and watch that, because I think it does a great job in explaining, you know, one, what writing is, and then the power of writing when we use it correctly. And it got into phonemes and sounds and our alphabet and those kinds of things. So please go back and watch the It Is Written series. It is here on Facebook, and then on YouTube. It's I've actually gone into the YouTube videos and organized them into playlists. I don't know if I organized them right. I don't know if they're gonna play in order, because I didn't realize it was putting them in an order when I was clicking on them. So I'm not sure if they're going to play in order, but they are there in their rightful playlist. All the videos that go with the series that I am doing here are there. So please check those out. The information is still good, even though we are in series 4, series 1, series 2, series 3. I do believe that there is a progression and a building going on with these videos, and I do think they will help you. If you have not seen the previous series, then for you to go back and watch them, so you can kind of see how we got here. So thank you so much for watching. Whenever you see this, I hope you have had a great day, and I hope that you continue to have a great day, and that you will join us this week, guys, on Wednesday for our Write on Wednesday recap instead of Thursday. I may go live, or I may go ahead and pre-record it. I think I'm going to go live, because the pre-records, it's okay. But if I have time, I may pre-record it. I don't know. So it's on the advertisement that I'll either do a Facebook Live video or a recording, and just upload that information to you guys so that you guys can see it. So I can't remember what time I said. But nevertheless, on Wednesday we will recap, and then on Friday I will repost the videos, which I did not do on Friday. I'm so sorry, I forgot. So Friday I forgot to repost the videos for last week, so that you guys could see them if you had not, because sometimes the stuff get lost in the news feed. So my apologies, I really did. I honestly forgot to do that. I got so caught up in trying to get the ads and stuff together for this week. I forgot to post those. So hopefully I won't forget. I hope I won't forget. I know what's happening, because I can schedule all of the stuff in advance. I can't necessarily schedule these until after I do them. So I probably will go ahead and schedule this one to post on Friday on its own. And then after Wednesday, I go right back in and schedule that one to post again. So I hope you guys enjoy your evening and have a great week this week. And I will see you soon, God willing. See you guys on next time. Bye.